The words hit me like a slap across the face. "We're doing Christmas at my mom's this year. You can stay home." My daughter-in-law Amanda stared at me coldly from across my dining room table, her voice matter of fact. After 35 years of hosting Christmas for my family, I felt my heart shatter. But I simply nodded, refusing to give her the satisfaction of seeing my pain. That night, I did something completely out of character. I booked a flight to Hawaii. Little did I know that this desperate decision would lead to an encounter that would change everything, starting with the mysterious man who sat beside me on the plane. Christmas had always been my season. Ever since James was born 42 years ago, I poured my heart into creating magical holidays filled with homemade cookies, hand-picked gifts, and our special Christmas Eve dinner. Even after my husband Frank passed away 11 years ago, I maintained every tradition, determined to keep our family close. The tree would go up the day after Thanksgiving, covered in ornaments James had made throughout his childhood. The nativity scene Frank had carved took pride of place on the mantel. The house smelled of cinnamon and pine, and Christmas music played softly in the background. Everyone who entered commented on how warm and inviting it felt. James and I shared a special bond, particularly after Frank died. He would call me daily, stop by several times a week, and make sure I was never alone on weekends or holidays. For years, it was just the two of us at Christmas, though occasionally James would bring a girlfriend. None of them lasted long enough to become part of our traditions. Until Amanda. 6 years ago, James brought Amanda home to meet me. She was beautiful, with perfect blonde hair and an engaging smile. She complimented my home, ate 2 helpings of my pot roast, and asked about family photos. James looked at her with such adoration that I couldn't help but feel happy for him. When they announced their engagement 3 months later, I was genuinely thrilled. The first Christmas with Amanda, as part of the family, went smoothly. She offered to help in the kitchen, brought a lovely wreath as a gift, and seemed to enjoy our traditions. I remember thinking how fortunate we were that James had found someone who blended so well into our small family. The shift was gradual, almost imperceptible at first. The second Christmas, Amanda suggested we try her family's stuffing recipe instead of mine. "Just to change things up," she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I agreed, wanting to make her feel included. By the third Christmas, Amanda arrived early to help decorate, but I found her rearranging my carefully placed ornaments, moving my nativity scene to a side table where it was barely visible. "This arrangement is more modern," she explained when I questioned her. James just shrugged and said it looked nice. Last Christmas, Amanda took over the kitchen entirely. She criticized the way I basted the turkey, claimed my mashed potatoes were too lumpy, and served store-bought pie instead of my homemade apple cobbler that James had always loved. "No one has time for baking from scratch anymore," she announced. I noticed James didn't eat much dessert that night. Throughout the year, the pattern continued. Sunday dinners at my house became opportunities for Amanda to make subtle digs. "This chicken is a little dry, isn't it?" Or, "Your curtains are so outdated, don't you think?" Each comment delivered with that same smile. I stayed silent for James's sake, watching him become increasingly uncomfortable, but never stepping in. Then came that fateful Sunday dinner, 3 weeks before Christmas. I had spent the day making James's favorite pot roast, hoping to discuss holiday plans. I'd already purchased ingredients for all our traditional dishes and bought most of my gifts. "We need to talk about Christmas," I said, as I served coffee and peach cobbler. That's when Amanda straightened in her chair and delivered her pronouncement. "We're doing Christmas at my mom's this year. You can stay home." The silence that followed was deafening. I looked at James, waiting for him to say something, anything. He stared at his dessert, poking it with his fork. "James?" I prompted quietly. "Mom, we've done Christmas here forever," he finally said, his voice weak. "Maybe it's time for a change." "Of course," I said, amazed at how steady my voice sounded when I felt like I was breaking apart inside. "That sounds nice." Amanda shot me a triumphant smile before turning to James. "Mom's planning a big dinner. All my sisters will be there with their kids. It'll be great." After they left, I sat alone at my dining room table until midnight, surrounded by Christmas decorations that suddenly seemed meaningless. I checked Facebook before going to bed, a habit I'd developed to keep up with friends and former colleagues. A notification appeared for a group I'd never seen before, dealing with mother-in-laws. It had been shared by one of Amanda's friends, tagging Amanda. Curious, I clicked on it. There, dated 2 months earlier, was a post from Amanda. Finally convinced hubby we're doing Christmas at my mom's this year. MIL doesn't know yet, but I can't wait to see her face when she realizes she's not the queen of Christmas anymore. Boundaries my turn now. The comments below were worse. Good for you taking back control. Old ladies need to learn their place. And Amanda's reply, working on getting hubby to move us across town too. Phase 1 of getting rid of the mother-in-law problem starts with Christmas. I closed my laptop, my hands trembling. This wasn't about family traditions or change. This was about systematically removing me from my son's life. I spent the next 2 days in a fog of hurt and disbelief. I barely ate, didn't answer the phone, and let tears fall freely as I moved through my house, touching the Christmas decorations I'd collected over decades. Each one held memories. The angel topper James had saved up for when he was 12. The stocking Frank had filled each year with thoughtful little gifts. The snow globe my mother had given me before she passed. On the morning of the 3rd day, I woke up with swollen eyes and a moment of clarity. I was 67 years old. I had spent my entire adult life putting my family first, raising James alone after Frank died, supporting him through college and his early career, being available whenever he needed me. And what was my reward? Being cast aside, deliberately excluded, and mocked online by my daughter-in-law. No more, I whispered to my reflection. I showered, made myself a proper breakfast, and opened my laptop with a new sense of purpose. I had never taken a vacation by myself. Trips had always been family affairs, planned around school schedules and later, James's work commitments. Frank and I had talked about traveling after retirement, but cancer took him before we had the chance. The travel fund we'd started sat untouched in my savings account for over a decade. Where do people go for Christmas? I murmured, typing queries into the search bar. Europe was too cold. The Caribbean seemed too party-oriented for a woman my age traveling alone. Then I saw it. Hawaii for the holidays. The images of palm trees strung with lights, gentle waves lapping at sandy beaches, and luxurious hotels decorated for Christmas, but bathed in sunshine, called to me. Before I could overthink it, I booked a 10-day package at a beachfront resort on Maui. The price made me wince almost $8,000 with the flight, but Frank's voice seemed to whisper in my ear. That's what the money's for, Bales, to live. The confirmation email arrived with a cheerful Merry Christmas from Maui, subject line. I stared at it, hardly believing what I'd done. A laugh bubbled up from somewhere deep inside me, surprising in its freedom. I didn't tell James about my plans. When he called the next day, his voice was hesitant. How are you doing, Mom? I'm fine, James. The lie came easily. About Christmas. I just want to make sure you'll be okay on your own. Maybe we could stop by in the morning before heading to Amanda's mom's? I recognized the guilt in his voice, but also the relief that I wasn't making a scene. Don't worry about me. I'll be just fine. Maybe you could join the church group dinner? Mrs. Henley mentioned they do something on Christmas Day. I'll figure something out, I said vaguely. You enjoy your time with Amanda's family. After hanging up, I made a list of what I'd need for Hawaii. My wardrobe consisted mainly of practical clothes suitable for Michigan winters, volunteer work at the library, and Sunday dinners. Nothing appropriate for a tropical vacation. The next day, I drove to the mall, credit card in hand. I bought sundresses in bright colors, sandals, a wide-brimmed hat, and even a modest swimsuit. The saleswoman at the department store raised her eyebrows when I mentioned Hawaii, but quickly became enthusiastic, helping me choose items that were age-appropriate but still stylish. Good for you, she said, as she rang up my purchases. My mother would never do something like this. She just guilts us all into coming to her house every year. I smiled, feeling a strange new confidence. Sometimes we need to make our own happiness. My next stop was the salon. Marjorie had been cutting my hair for 15 years, maintaining the same practical shoulder-length style with minimal fuss. "I want something different," I announced as I sat in her chair. "Something lighter." Marjorie looked delighted at the challenge. "I've been wanting to update your look for ages. What's the occasion?" "I'm going to Hawaii for Christmas," I said, the words still feeling foreign on my tongue. Her hands paused in my hair. "Bailey Wilson, you dark horse. Is there a gentleman friend involved?" She wiggled her eyebrows suggestively. "No, nothing like that. Just me." As Marjorie worked, trimming inches off my hair and adding what she called beachy layers, the salon filled with the usual pre-holiday crowd. I closed my eyes, half listening to the cheerful chatter around me. So she just uninvited her mother-in-law from Christmas? A voice from the next chair caught my attention. "Yes, Judy told me that Amanda's been planning it for months. Said the old lady is too controlling and it's time to start their own traditions." My eyes flew open. I knew that name. Amanda's cousin Judy was getting her highlights touched up 2 chairs away, talking to another stylist. "I feel kind of bad for her mother-in-law," the stylist was saying. "Holidays are hard enough for older people," Judy snorted. "Trust me, Amanda says she's a nightmare. Always criticizing, wanting everything her way. Amanda says she's been trying to create distance for years, but her husband is such a mama's boy. This Christmas thing is part of her bigger plan." "What bigger plan?" the stylist asked. "They're looking at houses on the other side of town. Amanda's hoping once they move further away, they can cut visits down to once a month or less. She says her mother-in-law is manipulative, calling all the time, making up reasons for James to come over." I sat perfectly still, trying to process what I was hearing. The calls James made to me, the Sunday dinners at my house, these were traditions he and I both valued. Or at least, I thought we did. "All done," Marjorie announced, swiveling my chair to face the mirror. I barely recognized the woman looking back at me. My silver-streaked brown hair now fell in soft waves just below my chin, framing my face in a way that somehow made my blue eyes look bigger and my cheekbones more pronounced. "You look 10 years younger," Marjorie declared proudly. "That daughter-in-law of yours better watch out. You're going to be turning heads in Hawaii." I managed a smile, keeping my newfound knowledge to myself. On the drive home, I struggled to reconcile the Amanda who smiled to my face with the one who was systematically trying to remove me from her life and my son's. For a moment, I considered canceling my trip, confronting James with what I'd learned, demanding an explanation. But what would that accomplish? It would only force him to choose sides, and I wasn't confident about which side he would choose. No, I decided as I pulled into my driveway. I would go to Hawaii. I would give myself the gift of peace this Christmas. And perhaps, from a distance, I might gain clarity on how to address this situation with dignity and strength. That evening, I finished packing my new clothes, tucked my travel documents into my purse, and set my alarm for the early flight on Christmas Eve. As I turned out the lights, I realized I felt something I hadn't experienced in a long time: anticipation. Christmas Eve arrived with a light dusting of snow that made my neighborhood look like a scene from a holiday card. I moved quietly through my morning routine, feeling oddly calm about my impulsive decision. I'd left all my decorations up the tree in the window, wreaths on the doors, nativity scene on the mantel. From the outside, everything looked normal. Anyone passing by would assume I was preparing for a festive family gathering, not fleeing to a tropical island. The taxi arrived promptly at 7. As the driver loaded my suitcase into the trunk, Mrs. Parker from next door came out to collect her newspaper. "Off somewhere for the holidays, Bailey?" she called, surprise evident in her voice. "Just a little trip," I replied vaguely. "Merry Christmas, Eleanor." The Detroit airport was a sea of harried travelers and crying children. I watched families navigating the chaos together. Fathers carrying sleeping toddlers, mothers checking boarding passes, grandparents trailing behind with bags of presents. For a moment, doubt crept in. What was I doing here alone? Should I be fighting harder for my place in my son's life instead of running away? A voice on the loudspeaker announced the final boarding call for a flight to Chicago, and I shook off the melancholy. I wasn't running away. I was choosing myself, perhaps for the first time in decades. My flight to Los Angeles was uneventful. I sat next to a young woman buried in her phone who barely acknowledged my presence. The layover gave me just enough time to find my gate for the final leg to Maui. As boarding began, I felt a flutter of excitement mixed with nervousness. By tonight, I would be thousands of miles from everything familiar. The flight to Maui was only half full, the airline having overestimated how many people would travel on Christmas Eve. I had been assigned an aisle seat in the middle section. As I settled in, arranging my book and water bottle, a deep voice spoke from behind me. "Excuse me, but I believe that's my seat by the window." I looked up to see a tall man with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes gesturing to the row. I stood to let him pass, noting his well-tailored casual clothes and the quiet confidence in his posture. "Hawaii for Christmas?" he asked, as he stored his bag in the overhead compartment. "That's different." "Very different," I admitted. "My first time." He sat down and extended his hand. "Thomas Elliot." "Bailey Wilson?" I replied, shaking his hand briefly. As the plane took off, Thomas and I maintained a polite silence. I opened my book, but the words swam before my eyes as exhaustion from the early start and emotional days caught up with me. I must have dozed off because I woke to the flight attendant asking about drink preferences. "Water for me," I said, still groggy. "The same," Thomas added. "And perhaps a blanket for my seatmate? She seems cold." I realized I had been hugging myself against the plane's aggressive air conditioning. "Thank you," I said, as the attendant handed me a thin airline blanket. "You're welcome." Thomas smiled, and I noticed the crinkles around his eyes, the kind that come from years of laughter. "So, what takes you to Hawaii at Christmas, if you don't mind my asking?" The question was innocent enough, but it opened a floodgate. Perhaps it was the altitude, or the strange intimacy of sitting next to a stranger for hours, or simply the need to unburden myself to someone who knew nothing about me. Whatever the reason, I found myself telling Thomas about Amanda's announcement, James's failure to stand up for me, and my impulsive decision to flee. "I've never done anything like this," I concluded. "I've always been the reliable one, the one who stayed put so everyone else could count on me being there." Thomas nodded thoughtfully. "Sometimes the people who most deserve a break are the ones who never take one." "What about you?" I asked, suddenly self-conscious about my oversharing. "Why Hawaii for Christmas?" A shadow crossed his face. "Somewhat similar circumstances, actually. My wife passed away 3 years ago. Cancer. For the first 2 years, my children insisted I join them for the holidays, but I could see it was more out of obligation than desire. This year, my daughter mentioned they were thinking of going to her in-laws' ski cabin, and I suggested they do that without worrying about me. "I'm sorry about your wife," I said softly. He smiled, a genuine one that reached his eyes. "Thank you. Elizabeth was an extraordinary woman. We had 38 wonderful years together." The conversation flowed more easily after that. We discovered we were both from Michigan, though Thomas lived in Grand Rapids, about 2 hours from my home near Detroit. He was 69 to my 67. We shared a love of mystery novels, classic movies, and gardening. He made me laugh with stories of his early career disasters, and I found myself telling him about Frank, about raising James, about my work as a librarian before retirement. Somewhere over the Pacific, as we shared a package of cookies the flight attendant had offered, Thomas said something that caught me off guard. "You know, I feel like I've heard your name before. Wilson from the Detroit area. Do you have a son named James? James Wilson?" I nearly choked on my cookie. "Yes, that's my son. Do you know him?" Thomas looked equally surprised. "I believe I do. Does he work for Meridian Development?" "Yes, he's their marketing director." Thomas sat back, shaking his head in amazement. "Well, I'll be damned. Pardon my language. Bailey, I've met your son several times. My company, Elliott Hotels, has had discussions with Meridian about potential partnerships for a new property in Detroit. I stared at him, processing this coincidence. Elliott Hotels? You own a hotel chain? He nodded modestly. Among other things. Started with one small property in Michigan 40 years ago and gradually expanded. We're not Hilton or Marriott, but we have 24 locations now, mostly in the Midwest and West Coast. My mind was reeling. And you've actually talked with James? Recently? Yes, over the past year or so. He's impressed me with his marketing strategies. Thomas paused, studying my face. He mentioned his mother once or twice, actually. Said she was the wisest person he knew, that she had raised him alone after his father died. I remember being touched by how he spoke about you. Tears pricked at my eyes, and I blinked them away. He said that? To a business associate? He did. He spoke very highly of you. Thomas's expression softened, which makes me all the more confused about this Christmas situation you've described. I sighed. I am too. The James who talks to you doesn't sound like the same person who sat silently while his wife told me I wasn't welcome for Christmas. People are complex, Thomas said gently. And sometimes they get caught between competing loyalties. We fell into thoughtful silence as the plane began its descent. The captain announced we would be landing in 20 minutes, and through the window, I caught my first glimpse of Maui, lush green mountains rising from the blue ocean, so different from the snow-covered landscape I'd left behind. Where are you staying? Thomas asked as we gathered our belongings. The Palmyra Resort, I replied, checking my itinerary. His eyebrows rose. That's quite a coincidence. I'm staying there as well. You're not staying at one of your own hotels? He laughed. We don't have a property on Maui yet. That's actually part of why I'm here scouting potential locations while enjoying some downtime. The plane touched down with a gentle bump, and a ripple of applause went through the cabin. Outside, palm trees swayed in the breeze under a brilliantly blue sky. As we taxied to the gate, I felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. Bailey, Thomas said, as passengers began standing and retrieving luggage, would you consider having dinner with me tonight? Unless you're too tired from traveling. The invitation surprised me. I hadn't been asked to dinner by a man since Frank died. My instinct was to politely decline, to retreat to my room and process the whirlwind of the past few days. But something, perhaps the spirit of my new adventurous self, made me nod. I'd like that, I said. Thank you. As we disembarked into the open-air terminal, I was struck by the warm breeze carrying the scent of flowers. Airport staff greeted us with Mele Kalikimaka, Merry Christmas in Hawaiian, and placed fragrant lei around our necks. Standing there with flowers around my neck and the sun on my face, I realized I hadn't thought about Amanda's smug smile or James's silence for hours. Whatever happened next, this journey was already giving me something valuable. Perspective. The Palmyra Resort exceeded every expectation. My room featured a private balcony overlooking the ocean, a king-sized bed draped in crisp white linens, and a bathroom larger than my entire kitchen at home. Fresh flowers adorned every surface, and a welcome basket contained local fruits, chocolates, and a bottle of champagne. After unpacking, I showered away the travel fatigue and changed into one of my new sundresses, a turquoise one that brought out the blue in my eyes. I still wasn't used to my new haircut, but I had to admit that Marjorie had been right. The lighter style made me look younger, more carefree. Thomas and I had arranged to meet in the lobby at 7. As the elevator descended, I felt a flutter of nerves. This wasn't a date, I reminded myself. Just dinner between two solo travelers who happened to be staying at the same resort. The lobby had been transformed for Christmas Eve. A massive tree decorated with orchids and tropical ornaments dominated the center, while subtle lighting and Hawaiian music created a festive yet serene atmosphere. Thomas was waiting near a fountain, looking handsome in khaki pants and a blue button-down shirt. "You look lovely," he said as I approached. "That color suits you." "Thank you." I felt my cheeks warm at the compliment. You clean up pretty well yourself. He smiled, offering his arm. I took the liberty of making reservations at the oceanfront restaurant. I hope that's acceptable. The restaurant was open air, with tables spaced along a wooden deck overlooking the beach. Tiki torches provided romantic lighting, and the sound of waves created a soothing backdrop. Christmas garlands and lights had been strung along the railings, a charming blend of holiday and tropical aesthetics. "This is beautiful," I murmured, as we were seated at a prime table near the edge. "Not a bad way to spend Christmas Eve," Thomas agreed, ordering a bottle of white wine for us to share. Under normal circumstances, I might have declined the wine, but nothing about this situation was normal. I was thousands of miles from home on a holiday. I had always spent cooking for family, sitting across from a successful, attractive man I had met just hours ago. As we studied our menus, I couldn't help asking, "Do you really know James well? From your business dealings?" Thomas set down his menu. "We've had several meetings over the past year. Meridian Development has been proposing a joint venture for a boutique hotel in downtown Detroit. James heads their marketing team and has made several impressive presentations to my board." "That sounds like James," I said proudly. "He's always been dedicated to his work." "He's spoken of you, you know," Thomas continued. "Not extensively, but enough that I could tell you were important to him. He mentioned consulting his mother about some marketing concepts aimed at older travelers." I laughed. "He did ask my opinion on some advertisements a few months ago. I had no idea it was for your company." Our conversation paused as the server brought our wine and took our orders. I chose the fresh-caught mahi-mahi, while Thomas opted for a steak. "So tell me more about yourself, Bailey," Thomas said, raising his glass in a toast, beyond being James's mother and a former librarian. The question caught me off guard. For so long, my identity had been defined by my relationships to others: Frank's wife, James's mother, the helpful neighbor, the reliable volunteer. Who was I beyond those roles? "I love to garden," I began hesitantly. "I grow vegetables and flowers. I read constantly mysteries, mostly, but I'm trying to branch out. I volunteer at a literacy program teaching adults to read." Thomas listened attentively, asking thoughtful questions that drew me out. By the time our entrees arrived, I was animatedly describing my dream of writing children's books someday. "Why haven't you started?" he asked. I shrugged. There never seemed to be time. Or maybe I lacked courage. "It's never too late," he said simply. As we enjoyed our delicious meal, Thomas shared more about his own life. He had started with nothing, working as a hotel maintenance man while putting himself through college. His first property had been a rundown motel he'd renovated himself on weekends. His wife Elizabeth had been the hotel's first receptionist, and together they had built their company while raising 3 children. "Elizabeth was the heart of everything," he said. "After she died, I threw myself into work. My children worried, but business was the only thing that made sense." "I understand that," I said softly. "After Frank died, James became my whole world." Thomas nodded. "And now your world is changing again." "Yes." I took a sip of wine. "I'm not sure where I fit anymore." As dessert arrived, a shared plate of tropical fruits and sorbets, I decided to ask something that had been nagging at me. "Thomas, do you know Amanda, James's wife?" His expression shifted subtly. "I've met her briefly at a couple of corporate events." "And?" I prompted, sensing his hesitation. He chose his words carefully. "She struck me as ambitious." "Ambitious?" "She seemed very interested in who I knew, what connections I could offer." He paused. "I shouldn't say more. It's not my place to comment on your son's wife." I appreciated his discretion, but felt a twist of confirmation about Amanda's character. Our conversation moved to lighter topics as we finished our dessert. The restaurant had begun playing traditional Christmas carols with a Hawaiian musical twist, creating a surreal but pleasant atmosphere. After dinner, Thomas suggested a walk along the beach. The night was warm, the sky clear and filled with stars. We removed our shoes to feel the sand between our toes. Other couples and families strolled nearby, some taking photos by a large Christmas tree the resort had erected on the beach. "Would you like a picture?" Thomas asked, gesturing to the tree. "To remember your rebellious Christmas?" I laughed and handed him my phone. He took several photos of me by the tree, then asked a passing server to take one of both of us. In the picture, we stood side by side, the lit tree behind us, both smiling widely. Without overthinking it, I posted the photo to Facebook with the caption, "Merry Christmas from Maui. Sometimes the best gift is a new adventure." We continued our walk, talking easily about everything and nothing, favorite books, travel dreams, the simple pleasures of life. I couldn't remember the last time I had enjoyed a man's company so much, or felt so seen and heard. When we finally returned to the resort, it was past 11. Thomas walked me to my room like a perfect gentleman. "Thank you for a lovely evening," he said. "Would you like to join me tomorrow for some island exploration? It seems a shame to come all this way and not see the sights." "I'd like that very much," I replied. Back in my room, I changed into pajamas and settled on the balcony with a cup of tea, listening to the waves. For the first time in weeks, I felt at peace. The hurt of being excluded from Christmas was still there, but it had receded to a manageable ache rather than a sharp pain. Just as I was preparing for bed, my phone began buzzing with notifications. I picked it up, curious who would be messaging me on Christmas Eve. My Facebook post had garnered dozens of likes and comments in just an hour. "Looking gorgeous, Bailey. Merry Christmas. Hawaii? You go, girl. Who's the handsome gentleman?" I smiled at the supportive messages from friends. Then I noticed several text messages from James. "Mom, are you really in Hawaii? Why didn't you tell me you were traveling? Who is that man you're with?" And finally, "Please call me when you get this. I'm worried." Then came a text from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Amanda. Who is that old man, and why are you trying to ruin our Christmas with this attention-seeking behavior?" I sat heavily on the edge of the bed, my peaceful evening shattered. The contrast between the supportive messages from friends and the accusing ones from my family was stark. Amanda's text particularly stung. With its hypocrisy, she had excluded me from Christmas, yet now claimed I was ruining it. I considered calling James immediately, but glanced at the time. It was past midnight in Hawaii, which made it very early Christmas morning in Michigan. He was probably at Amanda's mother's house, where my call would only create tension. Instead, I texted back, "I'm fine, James. Enjoying a holiday trip. Merry Christmas to you and Amanda. Talk soon." To Amanda's message, I simply did not respond. I turned off my phone and placed it on the nightstand, determined not to let their reactions spoil my peace. Tomorrow was Christmas Day, and for the first time in decades, I had no responsibilities, no expectations to meet, no dinner to cook, just a day to enjoy with a new friend on a beautiful island. As I drifted off to sleep, I realized something surprising. I wasn't homesick at all. I woke to sunshine streaming through the curtains and the gentle sound of waves. For a moment, I was disoriented. This wasn't my bedroom in Michigan, with its view of snow-covered pines. Then I remembered. Hawaii. Christmas Day. Freedom. After a quick shower, I checked my phone. More messages from James, increasingly concerned, and another angry text from Amanda, claiming I was being selfish and dramatic. Several missed calls from both of them. I sent James another brief reassurance that I was fine and would call later, then silenced my phone. Thomas and I had arranged to meet for breakfast at 8. The resort's Christmas Day buffet was elaborate, featuring traditional holiday foods alongside Hawaiian specialties. Thomas was already at a table on the terrace when I arrived, reading a newspaper and sipping coffee. "Merry Christmas," he said, standing to greet me. "Merry Christmas," I replied, taking in the surreal scene of palm trees and ocean views on a day I usually spent in a snowy landscape. "I took the liberty of arranging a tour for us," Thomas said, as we filled our plates at the buffet. "A private driver will show us the road to Hana, with stops at several gardens and waterfalls. Unless you had other plans?" "That sounds wonderful," I said, touched by his thoughtfulness. Our driver, Kikoa, arrived in a comfortable SUV, stocked with water bottles, snacks, and a small cooler with lunch. A native Hawaiian with deep knowledge of the island, he provided fascinating commentary as we wound along the famous coastal road. The day passed in a blur of breathtaking vistas, lush rainforests, and sparkling waterfalls. At each stop, Thomas was attentive, without being overbearing, offering a hand on steep paths, but never assuming I needed help. We took photos of each other, and together, laughing like old friends. I found myself relaxing completely in his company. During a picnic lunch beside a waterfall, Thomas shared more about his business and family. "My children think I should retire," he said, unwrapping a sandwich. "My oldest son, Michael, is already the CEO in all but name. But I'm not ready to step away entirely." "I understand that," I replied. "Work gives purpose, identity." "Exactly." He looked at me appreciatively. "Most people just tell me to play more golf." I laughed. Not everyone finds fulfillment in chasing a little white ball around manicured grass. As we continued our tour, Thomas revealed more about his knowledge of James. "Your son impressed me from our first meeting," he said as we gazed out at the ocean from a scenic overlook. "He has a creative approach to marketing that stands out in an industry full of conventional thinking." Pride warmed my heart. He was always imaginative, even as a child. He'd make up elaborate stories about his toys, create whole worlds. Thomas nodded thoughtfully. He mentioned once that his creativity came from his mother, who read to him every night and took him to museums instead of just parking him in front of the television. Tears pricked my eyes. "He said that?" "He did." Thomas hesitated. "Bailey, there's something I should tell you. I know more than I've let on." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" "James consulted me about Hawaiian resorts several months ago. Not for himself, for you." I stared at him, confused. "For me? But why would he?" "He was planning to surprise you with a family trip to Hawaii next year. For your 70th birthday. He wanted my recommendation on which resorts would best suit a multi-generational family vacation." The world seemed to tilt beneath me, but that's almost 3 years away. He was planning ahead. Said it was important to make it perfect because you'd never been anywhere tropical, and he wanted to give you the experience while you were still young enough to enjoy it fully. I sank onto a nearby bench, trying to process this information. But then why would he let Amanda exclude me from Christmas? It doesn't make sense. Thomas sat beside me. "I can't explain that. But I know he spoke about you with genuine love and respect." My mind raced, trying to reconcile these contradictions. The James who discussed taking me to Hawaii was not the same James who sat silently while his wife dismissed me from Christmas plans. "There's more," Thomas said carefully. "When I saw you on the plane and you told me your story, I didn't immediately connect you with James's mother. It was only during our conversation at dinner that I realized who you were. I should have told you then, but I wanted to be certain." "Told me what?" "James called me 2 days ago, asking if I knew any good restaurants on Maui. Said his mother had unexpectedly gone there for Christmas, and he wanted to send her a gift certificate or arrange a special dinner." He sounded confused, Bailey. Like he didn't understand why you had suddenly left. I shook my head, bewildered. But he knew. "Amanda told me right in front of him that I wasn't welcome for Christmas." "Are you certain that's what he heard or understood?" The question gave me pause. I replayed the scene in my mind. Amanda's cold statement, James's uncomfortable silence, his weak suggestion that maybe it's time for a change. Had he truly understood what was happening? Or had Amanda told him something different later? My phone had been mostly silenced in my purse all day, but now I felt compelled to check it. 27 missed calls from James. Texts ranging from concerned to panicked. "Mom, please call me. I'm really worried." "Are you okay? This isn't like you. I'm sorry if I did something to upset you. Please just let me know you're safe." The most recent, sent just an hour ago. "Mom, I'm at your house. Everything looks normal, but you're not here. Your neighbor said you left Christmas Eve morning with a suitcase. I don't understand what's happening. Please call me." "I need to call him," I said, looking up at Thomas. "Of course. He gestured to Cocoa that we'd be a few minutes, then walked a discreet distance away to give me privacy. James answered on the first ring. "Mom, thank God. Are you okay?" "I'm fine, James," I replied, keeping my voice calm. "I'm in Hawaii, as you saw from my Facebook post." "But why? Why would you just leave without telling anyone? And who is that man you're with?" I took a deep breath. "James, I left because I wasn't wanted for Christmas. Amanda made that very clear." There was a pause. "What are you talking about?" 3 weeks ago, at Sunday dinner. Amanda said you were spending Christmas at her mother's house and that I should stay home." "You were there, James. You didn't say anything." Another pause, longer this time. "Mom, that's not. I didn't understand it that way. Amanda said her mother had invited us all for Christmas dinner, but that you might be more comfortable having your usual celebration at home. She said you'd agreed to it." My free hand clenched into a fist. "That is not what happened, James. She specifically said, and I quote, 'We're doing Christmas at my mom's this year. You can stay home.' There was no invitation, no discussion of my comfort." But I could hear the confusion in his voice. "She told me you wanted a break from hosting, that you were tired and would prefer a quiet Christmas." The pieces were falling into place. "James, I never said that. Never even implied it. Christmas with you is the highlight of my year." I heard a sharp intake of breath. "Mom, I don't know what to say. I would never have agreed to exclude you from Christmas. You know that, right?" I wanted to believe him, but the doubt had been planted weeks ago and nourished by Amanda's online comments. "I don't know, James. You've been different since you married Amanda, more distant, less likely to stand up for me when she makes her little digs." "What little digs?" He sounded genuinely perplexed. "The comments about my cooking being outdated, my house being too cluttered, my clothes being old-fashioned, the way she rearranges my decorations and criticizes everything I do. I thought she was just trying to be helpful," he said weakly. "No, James. She's been systematically undermining me for years. And now I know she's been actively trying to separate us." "What do you mean?" I hesitated, then decided he needed to know everything. "I saw her post in a Facebook group about dealing with mother-in-laws. She was bragging about keeping me away from Christmas, calling it phase 1 of getting rid of the mother-in-law problem. She mentioned moving across town to further distance you from me." The silence on the other end of the line was profound. Finally, James spoke, his voice tight with anger. "I had no idea, Mom. I swear to you, I would never have allowed that." In the background, I heard a woman's voice, Amanda's. "Is that your mother? Let me talk to her." "No," James said firmly. "Not to me, but to her. You've done enough." More muffled sounds suggested he was moving to another room. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I've been blind. I never saw what was happening." "Oh, James." My anger was fading, replaced by sadness for both of us. "We've both been manipulated." "I'm going to fix this," he promised. "But first, are you really okay? Are you safe? Who is this man you're with?" I glanced over at Thomas, who was politely examining a flowering tree. "His name is Thomas Elliott. He owns Elliott Hotels. Apparently, you've met him through work." "Thomas Elliott? The Thomas Elliott?" James sounded shocked. "You're spending Christmas with one of the most successful hotel developers in the Midwest?" "We met on the plane," I explained. "It was coincidence. He's been a perfect gentleman, showing me around the island." "Mom, Thomas Elliott is. He's someone I respect enormously. His company is known for integrity and innovation. I've been trying to get Meridian to partner with them for over a year." Something in his tone made me curious. "Is there a problem with that partnership?" James sighed. "Elliott rejected our most recent proposal last month. Said something about ethical concerns with some of our team members. It was a major setback for my department." I looked again at Thomas, remembering his careful words about Amanda being ambitious and his hesitation to say more. "James, I need to go," I said. "We're on a tour, and our driver is waiting. I'll call you tomorrow, I promise." "Mom, wait. When are you coming home?" "My return flight is January 2nd. Can we talk before then?" Really talk? There's so much I need to say, to apologize for. Yes, James. We'll talk. I love you. I love you too, Mom. I'm so sorry. I ended the call and sat for a moment, processing. Thomas approached cautiously. Everything all right? I looked up at him, a new understanding dawning. You rejected Meridian's proposal because of Amanda, didn't you? He didn't pretend not to understand. Yes. She attended a preliminary meeting and made some concerning statements about how they could manipulate certain zoning regulations. When I inquired further, she brushed it off as creative business strategies. But my company has built its reputation on ethical practices. And you never told James why? Thomas shook his head. It wasn't my place to create problems in his marriage or career. I simply declined the partnership with a vague explanation about differences in business philosophy. I stood up, suddenly seeing Thomas in a new light. You knew who I was on the plane, didn't you? You recognized me from photos in James's office or presentations. He had the grace to look sheepish, I suspected, but I wasn't certain until you confirmed your last name and connection to James. I should have been honest from the beginning. Yes, you should have, I agreed, but found I wasn't truly angry. Were you trying to get information about James's company through me? No, Thomas said firmly. My interest in you has nothing to do with business. When I saw you on that plane, looking both determined and vulnerable, I was simply intrigued. Learning you were James's mother was a surprising coincidence, nothing more. I studied his face, looking for signs of deception but finding only sincerity. This is all very complicated. Life often is, he said simply. Shall we continue our tour, or would you prefer to return to the resort? I considered for a moment. Let's continue. I've seen enough drama for one Christmas. I'd rather enjoy the waterfalls. Thomas smiled, relief evident in his expression. We rejoined Kakoa, who pretended not to notice any tension as he guided us to our next destination. Throughout the afternoon, I mulled over the revelations of the day. James had been misled, manipulated by Amanda into believing I wanted to be alone for Christmas. He had been planning a special Hawaiian vacation for my 70th birthday, hardly the action of a son trying to distance himself from his mother. And Thomas, what was I to make of him? He had withheld important information, yet his company with me seemed genuine. The way he listened when I spoke, remembered details I mentioned, and respected my independence all spoke to a man of character. By the time we returned to the resort for Christmas dinner, I had reached a sort of peace. The truth was complex, as truth often is. People could make mistakes without being villains. Relationships could be damaged but not beyond repair. Over a festive meal with live Hawaiian music and dancing, Thomas and I reached a new understanding. No more secrets, no more omissions. Just two people enjoying each other's company in a beautiful place, letting the future unfold as it would. As we watched the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Thomas raised his glass in a toast. To new beginnings, he said, and unexpected gifts. I clinked my glass against his, feeling for the first time in years that I was exactly where I was meant to be. The day after Christmas, I woke early and sat on my balcony with coffee, watching the sunrise. My conversation with James had left me with mixed emotions: relief that he hadn't knowingly excluded me, anger at Amanda's manipulation, and uncertainty about how to proceed. Thomas had suggested we explore the north shore of the island today, but I texted him asking for a rain check. I needed time to think, to plan my next steps. He responded with understanding, offering to meet for dinner instead if I felt up to it. Alone with my thoughts, I decided it was time for a more thorough conversation with James. I called him, calculating it would be early afternoon in Michigan. He answered immediately. "Mom, I'm so glad you called. James, we need to talk about what's been happening." "I know." His voice was solemn. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since yesterday, and I've learned some things." "What things?" He took a deep breath. "After we talked, I confronted Amanda about what you said. At first, she denied everything, claimed you were misinterpreting her words. But when I mentioned the Facebook post, she got defensive, said I was invading her privacy by checking her social media. And? I pressed her, Mom. I needed to know the truth. Eventually, she admitted she's been trying to create distance between us, said my relationship with you was unhealthy and codependent, that I needed to prioritize her as my wife. I bit back a sharp response. Go on. I was shocked, trying to process it all, when her phone chimed with a message. She'd left it on the counter while she went to get water, and I saw the notification. It was from her mother, asking if their plan was working and if I was finally cutting the apron strings. My hand tightened around my phone. Her mother was in on this too? Apparently, James's voice cracked. When I confronted Amanda about it, she broke down. Said she's always felt like she was competing with you for my attention and affection. That her mother suggested creating physical distance would help strengthen our marriage. I closed my eyes, processing this. James, I've never tried to come between you and Amanda. From the beginning, I've supported your marriage, stepped back when appropriate, tried to welcome her into our family. I know that now, Mom. I should have seen it sooner. The way she would make those little comments about you, then tell me you were being too sensitive when I objected. The way she'd schedule things that conflicted with our regular visits, then act like it was unavoidable. Why didn't you say anything when she told me to stay home for Christmas? He sighed heavily. Because she told me a completely different story afterward. Said you two had discussed it privately, that you were tired of hosting and wanted a break, that you were actually relieved. And you believed that? I shouldn't have, he admitted. But she's been planting these ideas for months, that you were finding our traditions burdensome, that you wanted more independence, that you felt obligated but would prefer space. Little by little, I started to believe it. The manipulation was so calculated, it took my breath away. James, I need to be very clear about something. I have never found our relationship burdensome. I have never wanted distance from you. Christmas with you has always been the highlight of my year. I know that now, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I feel like such a fool. You're not a fool, I said, softening. You trusted your wife. That's what you're supposed to do. But I should have trusted you too. Should have checked with you directly, instead of accepting her version of events. We were quiet for a moment, both processing. Then James spoke again, his tone shifting. There's something else, Mom. Something about Thomas Elliot. My pulse quickened. What about him? After we talked yesterday, I looked back through my work emails, trying to understand why Elliot Hotels rejected our proposal. I found notes from a meeting Amanda attended with me. Thomas raised concerns about some aggressive marketing tactics she suggested, things I wasn't even aware she'd proposed. What kind of tactics? Misleading competitors about our plans. Using insider connections to bypass normal approval channels, targeting vulnerable neighborhoods for development without proper community engagement. None of this was in our official proposal, but apparently she brought it up in side conversations with Thomas and his team. I remembered Thomas's careful description of Amanda as ambitious. What an understatement. Mom, this rejection cost our company a multi-million-dollar opportunity. My team spent months on this proposal. Amanda knew how important it was to me. I'm sorry, James, I said sincerely. This must be devastating professionally. It is, he paused. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is realizing the woman I married is someone who would deliberately hurt my mother and potentially damage my career through her actions. I didn't know how to respond to that, so I simply listened. We had a huge fight last night, James continued. I confronted her with everything: the Christmas manipulation, the Facebook posts, the business ethics issues. She tried to turn it all around on me, said I was choosing you over her, that Thomas Elliot was filling my head with lies. What happened? I left, he said simply. Packed a bag and checked into a hotel. I need time to think. My heart ached for him, even as a part of me felt vindicated. I'm sorry, James. I never wanted this. I know, Mom. This isn't your fault. He took a deep breath. How's Hawaii? Apart from all this drama? I appreciated his attempt to lighten the conversation. It's beautiful, peaceful, very different from Christmas in Michigan. And Thomas? He's been good to you? Yes, I said cautiously. He's been a perfect gentleman, a good friend when I needed one. He's a respected businessman, James said, known for integrity. I want to make sure you're okay. I smiled at his protective tone. I'm a grown woman, James. I can take care of myself. I know, he chuckled softly. It's just strange to think of my mom dating one of my business associates. We're not dating, I protested automatically. Though even to my ears it sounded unconvincing. We're just enjoying each other's company. Well, you could do a lot worse, James said, surprising me. If you have to run off to Hawaii and meet someone, Thomas Elliot is probably the best-case scenario. We talked a while longer, making plans to have a proper conversation when I returned home. As we prepared to hang up, James said something that touched me deeply. Mom, I'm planning to come over the day you get back. We'll have our own Christmas, just the two of us like we used to, if that's okay with you. I'd like that very much, I said, blinking back tears. After ending the call, I sat for a long time watching the ocean. The confrontation with Amanda had been inevitable, though I took no pleasure in the pain it was causing James. Marriages could survive challenges, even breaches of trust, but it would take work and genuine change on Amanda's part. Later that afternoon, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. I answered cautiously. Bailey? This is Thomas. I hope I'm not disturbing you. Not at all, I replied, surprised he wasn't texting. Is everything all right? Yes. But I've had an unusual call from your son. My stomach dropped. James called you? Yes. About 20 minutes ago. Very professional, very direct. He apologized for his wife's inappropriate suggestions during our business discussions and asked if we might reconsider the partnership, specifically working with him and another team. What did you say? I told him we'd be open to reviewing a new proposal, provided certain ethical guidelines were explicitly agreed upon. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. That's generous of you. It's good business, Thomas said simply. Your son is talented. The issues weren't with him or his work. Did he say anything else? I asked, curious about what other topics might have been discussed. Thomas cleared his throat. He did ask about my intentions regarding his mother. Despite everything, I laughed. He didn't. He did. Very respectfully, but quite directly. And what did you tell him? The truth, Thomas said. That I've enjoyed your company enormously, that I respect you greatly, and that I hope to continue our friendship after we return home if you're amenable. My heart warmed at his words. I am amenable. Excellent. I could hear the smile in his voice. In that case, would you still care to join me for dinner tonight? The resort has a jazz trio playing at the beachfront restaurant. I'd like that, I replied. Perfect. I'll meet you in the lobby at 7. He paused. And Bailey? Yes? I'm glad you booked that flight. After we hung up, I stepped out onto the balcony and took a deep breath of tropical air. A week ago, I had been devastated, feeling unwanted and discarded. Now, improbably, I felt more valued and seen than I had in years. My phone chimed with a text from Amanda. I hope you're happy. You've ruined everything. I considered various responses, from righteous anger to smug satisfaction. In the end, I simply blocked her number. Whatever happened between her and James was their business now. I had a new life to explore. That evening, as Thomas and I danced under the stars to a jazz rendition of White Christmas, I realized that sometimes the worst rejection can lead to the most unexpected acceptance. And sometimes, the most painful exclusion can open the door to the most wonderful inclusion. The remainder of my Hawaiian vacation passed in a blur of sunshine, exploration, and deepening connection with Thomas. We hiked to hidden waterfalls, snorkeled in crystal-clear bays, and enjoyed long conversations over oceanside dinners. By the time New Year's Eve arrived, I felt transformed not just by the tropical setting, but by the profound shift in my perspective. The resort hosted an elegant celebration on the beach, with tiki torches, a sumptuous buffet, and dancing under the stars. I wore a new dress I'd purchased at the hotel boutique, a flowing midnight blue creation that made me feel both beautiful and age-appropriate. "You look stunning," Thomas said when he saw me in the lobby. "Not bad for 67, I replied with a smile. He took my hand. "Age is irrelevant when it comes to beauty. You'd be captivating at any age." As midnight approached, we joined other guests at the water's edge, champagne flutes in hand. The resort staff distributed paper lanterns that would be released into the night sky, carrying wishes for the new year. "What will you wish for?" Thomas asked, as we prepared our lanterns. I thought carefully. "Courage, to live differently than I have been." "That's a wish already coming true," he observed. When the countdown ended and cheers erupted, Thomas leaned in and kissed me gently. It was my first kiss since Frank died, and though part of me felt a momentary guilt, a stronger part recognized this as right and good, a new chapter beginning precisely as the new year dawned. The days that followed had a bittersweet quality as our departure date approached. Thomas and I had several frank conversations about the future. He lived in Grand Rapids, a 2-hour drive from my home near Detroit. Not insurmountable, but not convenient either. "I travel frequently for business," he pointed out, as we discussed logistics over breakfast on our final day. "Detroit is a common destination. We could see each other regularly, and I have no obligations keeping me in one place," I added. "Not anymore." He reached across the table for my hand. "Bailey, I don't want to rush you. We've known each other less than 2 weeks, but I haven't felt this way about anyone since Elizabeth died. I'd like to see where this could go, if you're willing." I squeezed his hand. "I am." My return flight was scheduled for January 2nd, with a connection through Chicago. Thomas was staying an additional day for business meetings with potential property developers, but had arranged for a car to take me to the airport. As we said goodbye in the resort lobby, he held both my hands in his. "This isn't an ending," he assured me. "Just an intermission." "I'll hold you to that," I replied, fighting unexpected tears. The journey home gave me time to reflect on the extraordinary turn my life had taken. A month ago, I had been devastated by exclusion from a family Christmas. Now, I was returning home with a renewed sense of self-worth, clearer boundaries, and the beginning of what might become a significant relationship. When my plane touched down in Detroit, snow was falling gently, a stark contrast to the tropical paradise I'd left behind. James was waiting at the arrival's gate, looking both anxious and hopeful. "Welcome home, Mom," he said, enfolding me in a tight hug. "It's good to see you," I replied sincerely. During the drive to my house, James filled me in on developments with Amanda. They were in counseling, both together and separately. Amanda had admitted to deep-seated insecurities about her place in James's life and jealousy of his relationship with me. "Her own mother is pretty controlling," James explained. "Amanda grew up thinking that's how mother-in-law relationships are supposed to be, a power struggle. She was trying to win a game I didn't even know we were playing." "Is she willing to change?" I asked cautiously. James nodded. "She's been humbled by this whole situation. The counselor is helping her see how her actions affected both of us. She knows she has to rebuild trust." I appreciated his honesty and the absence of pressure for an immediate reconciliation with Amanda. When we arrived at my house, I was touched to find a small Christmas tree set up in the living room, with presents underneath. "I thought we could have our own Christmas today," James explained. "Just the two of us." We spent a lovely afternoon opening gifts, enjoying a simple meal I threw together from my pre-vacation grocery stash, and talking more openly than we had in years. James shared his hurt and confusion over the past weeks, his embarrassment at having been so blind to Amanda's manipulation, and his determination to create healthier patterns in his marriage. "I've also been thinking about work," he added as we sat by the fireplace with mugs of hot chocolate. "Thomas Elliott called me yesterday after their meeting. He's tentatively agreed to consider a new partnership proposal if I head the team directly." "That's wonderful news," I said, genuinely pleased for him. "It's a second chance I probably don't deserve," James admitted, "both with him and with you." I reached over to squeeze his hand. We all need second chances sometimes. As James prepared to leave that evening, he hesitated at the door. Mom, about Thomas, are you serious about him? I considered the question carefully. I'm open to possibilities, I said finally. We connect in a way I haven't experienced since your father. But we're taking things slowly, seeing where it leads. James nodded thoughtfully. He seems like a good man, and you deserve happiness. Thank you, I said, touched by his support. After James left, I unpacked my suitcase, sorting laundry, and finding places for the few souvenirs I'd purchased. Among them was a small carved wooden box from a local artisan, inside which I'd placed the lei from my arrival and a few grains of Hawaiian sand, tangible reminders of my unexpected journey. The next morning, I woke to the sound of my phone ringing. It was Thomas, calling to check that I'd arrived home safely. The house feels different somehow, I told him. Or maybe I'm the one who's different. Probably both, he suggested. Life experiences change us, and in turn, we see our surroundings differently. We talked for nearly an hour, making plans for him to visit the following weekend. As we said goodbye, I realized I was smiling, something that had become natural during my time in Hawaii, but had been rare in the months before. Over the next 6 months, my life transformed in ways I couldn't have imagined that painful day when Amanda announced I wasn't welcome for Christmas. Thomas and I developed a rhythm of weekend visits, alternating between my home and his. He introduced me to his children and grandchildren, who welcomed me warmly once they saw how happy their father was. I showed him my favorite spots in Detroit, and he took me to cultural events in Grand Rapids. James and Amanda continued their counseling. In late March, Amanda asked to meet with me alone. Over coffee at a neutral cafe, she offered a genuine apology. I was wrong, she said simply. My insecurity and my own unhealthy family patterns led me to try controlling James's relationship with you. I'm working to understand why I felt so threatened and how to build a healthier dynamic. I appreciated her straightforwardness. Thank you for saying that, Amanda. I never wanted to come between you and James. I know that now, she admitted. And I'm learning that love isn't a finite resource. James having a close relationship with you doesn't diminish what he and I share. It wasn't an instant reconciliation, but it was a beginning. We started with occasional family dinners, everyone making an effort to communicate more honestly and respect boundaries. In June, my 68th birthday arrived. James and Amanda hosted a small gathering at their home, a peace offering of sorts. To my surprise, Thomas drove in from Grand Rapids to attend, bringing not only a thoughtful gift, but also an announcement. I've decided to open a boutique hotel in Detroit, he told the assembled guests, in partnership with Meridian Development, specifically with James's marketing team. The news was met with applause and congratulations for both men. Later, as Thomas and I walked in James's garden, he confessed there was more to the story. The hotel is partly a business decision, he said, but it's also personal. I want to spend more time where you are, Bailey. These past months of commuting between our lives have been wonderful, but I'm ready for something more consistent. My heart raced. What are you saying? He took my hand. I'm saying I love you, Bailey Wilson. I'm saying I want to be part of your life in a more permanent way. Are you proposing? I asked, hardly daring to believe it. He smiled. Not quite yet. That deserves a more special moment. But I am declaring my intentions, both to you and, earlier today, to your son. You asked James's blessing? I was touched by the traditional gesture. I did. He gave it most enthusiastically. Thomas's eyes crinkled with humor. Said it was about time someone appreciated how remarkable you are. 2 weeks later, Thomas proposed properly during a weekend in Chicago, presenting a vintage sapphire ring that had belonged to his grandmother. We decided on a small wedding in the fall, with only our children and closest friends in attendance. As plans progressed, James made good on his long-ago intention, presenting me with a surprise 70th birthday trip to Hawaii, now expanded to include Thomas, James, Amanda, and a significantly improved family dynamic. Looking back from the perspective of a year later, I marvel at how a painful exclusion became the catalyst for the most joyful inclusion. By forcing me out of my comfort zone and long-established patterns, Amanda's cruel Christmas proclamation inadvertently set me on a path to a fuller, richer life than I had ever imagined possible in my late 60s. Thomas and I now split our time between his home in Grand Rapids and mine near Detroit, with frequent travel to visit his hotels and explore new places together. James and Amanda have worked hard on their marriage, with Amanda making genuine efforts to repair her relationship with me. Last Christmas, we all gathered at my house, the traditions both honored and gently updated to include new family members. As I sit on my porch on this warm summer evening, waiting for Thomas to arrive for the weekend, I reflect on the valuable lessons of the past year. Sometimes rejection is protection from stagnation, from unhealthy patterns, from a life too small for our spirits. Sometimes the most painful moments force us to make choices we would otherwise be too afraid to consider. And sometimes, when someone tells you to stay home for Christmas, the best response is to book a flight to somewhere beautiful, open your heart to new possibilities, and discover that home isn't a place at all. It's wherever you are, fully yourself, fully alive, and fully loved. Have you ever had a painful rejection that ultimately led to something better in your life? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey of transformation, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need encouragement to take a chance on change. Thank you for listening, and I wish you the courage to book your own flight, metaphorical or literal, when life closes a door you thought you needed to walk through.